might become an authority on something you did back at this time. Just like we are now. All we are an authority on is simply this. We lived in some buildings like this. We worked in buildings like this. And these were old buildings when we were kids. And the folks that operated here at the time, these were old people then, and they were the second generation of this particular building, folks that I know. They were fine folks, they were very thrifty, and I tell you what, you didn't let a corn kernel go to waste, because I did work in here, so did Roy. For these people, we had sack feed, we had low feed, and I told all of you had to clean up that damn old chicken mess back there. That was the unpleasant part of it, but that was all part of it. But they were good people. They were honest folks, and they didn't make much money. But somehow they bought everything they needed. They paid for everything in cash. And I know that after we were married and after we built our first home that we built mostly ourselves, the lady that owned this store that I worked for the kids loaned us some money. And after we went through the flood, she loaned us without question another $1,000 just to go ahead and get the place, back to Louisville again. There wasn't a question asked, there wasn't a note signed, nothing. Just, yeah, you need it. Well, that old building over there, the thing that I know about that one, really has much more to say about this one. All I can say is my grandfather, who operated a dairy here, at the old home place for over 40 years, 60 years ago, he bought feed from these people, and they had no Model T truck that they delivered with, and if you had a ton of feed on that thing, 2,000 pounds, which is playing for a good pickup today, when they had a ton on that thing, they had a big load in it. My gosh, how do you ever pay for that big load of feed, And they brought that out to the sheriff. But enough about this. There's many things you don't make one ask Willie about. He can tell you that. But on that old barn back there, we know that one very well because we really grew up knowing it. The first one from this side, street side out, was the grain room, and they kept the grain in there. It was pretty well weather secured. Rain didn't get into it. And I was commenting earlier, if you look at the walls on it from the outside, the corners are not straight, they're not perpendicular to the ground, they're not straight up and down like you would a plumb building today. They're kind of angled a little bit. That's so that the rain, if the chinks didn't hold, or if they came out, and many of them did, because they've done a good job of refurbishing it, they were angled those where the rain would hit from the outside, it would curl off and roll to the outside rather than into the barn. And that's why they angle on it, a slight angle. And the thing that, to me, because I'm interested in woods, is two things with those cedar logs. Now, there's not many pieces of wood that if you don't cut it at the right season, at the right time of the year, and every wood has its own peculiar time for being cut. And that is usually when it's in its fullest sap, the tree, and it's in fruit, just beginning to have the full nourishment of everything it's got to offer going into the fruit. That's the time to cut it, and that's when all the wood has all of the sap in it. And then if it's cured correctly, then you can't just completely ignore it, but there's certain things that must be done for curing. And if it's naturally cured, which they did in those days, they didn't use a quick heat process at all. They aired it where air could get to it, and it would come in all spaces of it. Those little cedar logs are, well, way over 100 years old. I guess maybe they were cut 130 or 40 years ago. And you can't drive an accident until today, and they're not rotten. They're very wholesome. They were cut at the right time. But the most impressive thing is when I look up, they put a shingle roof back on that barn. When we knew it as kids, it had a metal roof on it because the original shingles finally rotted. And there was a time in this community where the city passed an ordinance where every house that was built had to have a metal roof. And that, I don't know if it's ever been removed from the city ordinance. Probably said, Darrell said it's still on there. Is that right, Darrell?
Probably is.
Probably is. But you see that they finally ignored it as asbestos shingles came along, what have you. But they had a problem with a rash of fires, just like they did in Houston a few years ago. They prohibited using all these shingle roofs, you know. The Spring Branch had worlds of them. That was the style, you know, they had them up there. But they burned so easily, and they had a rash of it, so they now prohibited using those in Houston. But these people said metal roofs. Well, this had a metal roof on it, but now when they refurbished it, they put a regular forward, and they put a shingle roof on it again, shingle roof. The thing I want to point out is I need you to go in there, it's made by important dealers, but it is to me in the bush. When you look up, and I'll delete this down, when you look up, that these shingles are nailed to boards that come across. And you follow kind of the outline of the bark itself. They used an over-under-saw, which was the popular thing in those days, platform, where one was down under, either had it dug out or they had it raised up. In any case, there was one on the underside of a handle of the saw, and the other one was on top of the platform, and it was an over-under process, and this is how they sawed. And they ripped those that way. I believe that is elm in there, and elm, any that ever get around elm, if it lasts a year without rotting out, it's been pretty good. Most of the time, about 2 years, and it's really just potted up, and bugs love to eat it up in a hurry, and it just goes fizzling. Wouldn't be good for firewood even. But those are probably 130 or so years old.
Yeah, but once they cure out without rotting, they get so hard that you have to drill a pilot hole before you can put a nail in it.
That's what these are now.
You can bend 40 nails in the same hole and still never get it done.
But he's right. When you see this, the trick is, and that's the important thing to remember. They knew that they better cure it or cut it first at the right time, and then cured it where they could use it like that. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been a year, 130 or so years. So the real trick was that they cut it first of all, the tree, when it was in its fullest sap, and then they cured it and cut them out and used it up there. I think that's the important part. To me, they learn things like that are practical. Who would like to put up something that will waste away immediately in a short time? They did put things, they took a lot. They didn't take just a short look at things. They took a long look at things, and I think that's important for all of us. We like that quick dollar. We want everything right now. We want it today. They didn't have the today's things that for right now benefit. They took a long look. That is an awful long look, isn't it? It is. That's all I can offer.
I was interested, Kenneth, did you start working for the Forkies when you were in high school, or at what period of time?
I said we were kids.
Oh,
It was about 12 years old,
Yeah.
13.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
You and both worked here then?
Well, not at the same time. We fought all the time, so they had to take them all the time to be
Separated
off.
Where was the exact location of this store?
Well, the sign says San Antonio and Yon Street. That's about halfway between the plaza and the old bridge on San Antonio.
Yeah, right next to where the Prince Elms Hotel was.
That's right.
Or
Okay,
is.
okay.
Yeah. That's better. That's a good way to identify it.
Yeah, right there in that area.
That's
And
right.
so did they stock everything from, like, groceries and?
No. No.
What was,
Feed.
just feed, it's a feed.
It's a feed store. They had some things some of the stuff you see up here. They had some
Canary seed and
Yeah.
canaries and baby chicks.
They had a lot of baby chicks, I can tell you.
They had a chick hatchery there on the river, close to the Katy Depot. And they had, I guess, a couple of thousand chickens there. And they hatched chickens. And they sold the chickens and shipped them by post all over the United States. and you could go out there and get a couple of dozen eggs, a couple of pounds of butter, and go back to living in town. Of course, it's a part of town now, but you could go back to living in town and live pretty damn good because you had a relative on the farm. You didn't need a whole lot of money, and money was pretty damn scarce. They were grown men with families that considered themselves lucky because they had a job that paid $6 a week. They lived on that. And nowadays, the younger generation leaves $6 tip on the table and thinks nothing of it. Times have changed drastically. I hope they don't come back, but it looks like we're going down instead of up. So hang on to your money. Spend it wisely.
Roy, can you tell us about, I remember Hannah was a mail carrier, something about deliveries of eggs or something.
I'm hard. But
About Hannah's mail delivery route, I remember something about delivering some butter or eggs to the Seekins family.
well,
I remember some story.
I ran a mail route from New Brunswick to Banco for the postal service. Hannah was my daddy's brother. Daddy was the oldest, and then came Hannah, and then came Alvin, and then came Mama Julia. Hannah was a fireman in New Braunfels, and then he moved to Corvus and was a fireman down there for a number of years, and he moved back up here and he got a mail delivery contract. He delivered mail from New Braunfels to Candelia, and all along one road going up to well, later on it was Candelia, first it was Banco, and then coming back a different way, and they called that a star route. And he would buy bushels of tomatoes and peaches and plums up there and sell them down here at a profit. And he made money coming and going. But he ran that route with an old Model A. I think he put 4 different motors in that Model A, but it was still the same old car. And that thing's all hell.
He had a 1934 Chevy pickup after that Model A
After
was
that,
retired. And on that Chevy pickup, he ran that thing into the Emil various times. It went over 400,000 miles that I'm aware of, that I know for sure. And each of us made a run up there with him at different times, and the roads were still unpaved. Many of them were on his route, and they were kind of the ripple effect, you know, the washboard kind, and you get that way awfully easily. And they were just the wing flaps. They just came, settled back in place somehow, but everything was going fine. Devil may care. He kept going, and that thing went from all that, those things on. He had an unusual ambition in life. It's well on way, but I really can't tell that. What David Roy, excuse me, what David was referring to was old man, I think, was old man Henry Quest, that lived out of town. He had no wife working away. He came to town every week and delivered eggs and butter.
And something else, so eggs and butter and something else. Cooked cheese.
Yeah, not cookies, but as he got to various days, one lady, an inquisitive old German housefrau, would ask him, said, "Mr. Betts," she says, "are these eggs fresh?" He says, he started to say, "Get out right then and take off." And she says, "Well, of course he told her yes." And she says, "Well, do you have roosters running with your chickens?" He said, "Of course I do." She said, "I don't want any of those eggs. I want any for the eggs only." She says, "But Mr. Wetz, I want some butter." He says, "Get out." He said, "Oh, Mr. Wetz, just a minute, I want a pound of butter." He said, "I had clothes running with my cows. Get out." didn't mean to stop.
Whitney probably remembers when Otto was hung for his ambition.
It's simple, but we don't want some of the hardships they have, I don't want to go back to it, and the difficulties of doing without, but in order to find themselves progressing at all, they kept certain values that were pretty important to them, basic and critical, and why they came over here to begin with, I think were three things we talked about earlier, and it's very true. And most folks that founded our country, and this group was certainly very explicit in that, that old Prussian rule they were under, that was havoc over them. It was horrible. And we talk about various kinds of persecutions today. They had religious persecutions that were so imposing that they didn't have any free will, much less my personal right kind of thing at all. And economic downtrodden, you had the upper and you had the very many low that were kept downtrodden down and kept that way. Well, they got away from that, and they faced a rather critical unknown when they came over here. Because when it took 2 months with families not knowing where they're going to land, how long it's going to take to get there, but it took 2 months at least to come across the water. And then from Indianola, when they came up this way, they bought this area as a way station to the land grants, which were further west. When they came in right here, they're from Indianola up here. The one group alone lost over 5,000 to cholera. This is why immediately after they got here, they founded the orphanage, which is out here on the river, not far from here. And then beyond that, the schooling in here, we talked about that earlier.
First
They
public
had
school in the state of Texas.
first tax-supported public school in Texas, and this was self-imposed. They did right here, within weeks after they got here. So they kept root with some basic values that were critically important to them, and they didn't have a thing, they hadn't got it, they had to make it from nothing, they didn't have anything right now, but they looked ahead quite a lot beyond themselves. And I think this really depicts that kind of thing, because when I talk about these woods and the buildings, it depicts people who are not looking for just something for me only right now, but
They were
something
looking for a handout, they were
no. What can I do to offer something and maybe contribute to last a while and be of some benefit to somebody? I think this is what I like to see in it. Hey, they had among those who came over here, I have some books that give the ship's logs even, of the people who came, where they came from, their names, and the family and stuff like that. And in many cases, here, there, down the line, you have only a name, nothing else. Hey, they aren't all that golden. They had those who were on the run too. They had people who didn't want anybody to know where they were going, so they couldn't be found, you know. And so it was a mixture of things, but I think the important thing is that generally they made a contribution and they offered something. And I think we have this as something that we can look at, enjoy, and see that in it. But it may be good for us to say, hey, I got a job to do too, don't I? I got something that I need to offer, you know, let somebody else have some better. Is that okay, teacher? All right.
Okay, now, you all got a family tree from the Goya, right? Right. In the mail. I've got I had it all ready, I just forgot to bring it along today. But I'll mail it to you. It's an obituary of Johann Friedrich Goya on the front page of the Braunfels Zeitung in whatever year it was he died. I don't really remember the year, but it was quite lengthy, and it's very informative. He and his wife came from Prussia. That's between Germany and Russia, but it's considered a part of Germany. It's the part that's closest to Russia, and they had a little boy, an infant. He died on the ship coming over here. And when he got here, his brother helped him get established. And he helped build the E&R Church and the Catholic Church. He was a stonemason by trade. And he raised, well, he had two more sons and 3 daughters over here in Nebraska. died in infancy, so he had 3 sons altogether, and they all 3 died in infancy. But he had 3 daughters, and they all lived to maturity. And there was Tanda Anna, and Ida was our grandmother. She married Charlie Welsh. And the other one's name, I forget her first name. But they all married, and we were related to an awful lot of people living around. It's an unusual name, Goya, G-E-U-E, but it's as German as they come. I'll send you all a copy of the obituary. It's really enlightening. We through with this.
Yeah.
I would like to see Barbara and Mary.
That would be something.
Tell me her about it. She figured
And what's that weird that small too?
See, Julie and Carl have family names. Family names.